Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for Politically Incorrect Knitters. I'm Deplorable Knitter, and I am joined, as always, by the wonderful and fabulous Pinkava. This week, we're joined by our special guest, Emily from Fiat Fiber Arts. Hey guys.
Hi.
Hello. Hey. And so before we start telling you about Emily and why she's with us today, Anne has this week's giveaway, or this month's giveaway, excuse me.
Month's giveaway. This month's giveaway is tweet us on Facebook by Chicken Lady Fiber Arts. It's beautiful. Here, see if we can get the color a little bit. It is her Surima sock, and it is the most lovely rich green. She's been coming out with a lot of like really great tonals lately. Have been fantastic. But you can use her code or this month's code BlueHen20PIK for 20% off your order. And go to her website, chickenladyfiberarts.com. Check out lots of cool yarns that she has.
Yeah, she has awesome yarns, and I love the tonals because you can still get like color variation, but you can it's not like that one skein yarn I showed on Knitting a couple weeks ago where it was so busy that you can't like do any patterns and stuff. Tonals are great for patterns and
Oh yeah.
color work.
She does
I love color
tonals,
work.
she does variegations.
Beautiful.
Sorry, I love
Yeah.
these two together. The sharks hug with their mouths and the meth. Like, that's fantastic. I love it. Anyways, sorry, I get distracted.
I think we all get distracted by yarn. That's not that unusual. So yeah, make sure you check out chickenladyfiberarts.com. Use the code BlueHen.
BlueHen20PIK.
Cool. Okay, so now that that's all good, hey Emily, thanks for coming on tonight.
You ladies, I'm glad to be here.
So I have followed you. I think I've followed you since the Ravelry thing imploded. Like I've known who you are for quite some time, but for the people who don't, can you give them like a little overview, who you are, what you do, that kind of thing?
Okay, sure. My name is Emily Ryder. My business name is Fiat Fiber Arts, and I'm a Catholic wife and mother, and that is the source of the name. It's not Fiat the car. It's in honor of Our Lady, Mary, Jesus's mother, and how she gave her fiat to God when the Annunciation happened. So part of my goal is actually Catholic apologetics along the way. And I thought that was great that it could be in the name, and I get to explain it every time I talk about it. But basically, she said yes to whatever you want for my life, God, whatever you will. And I hope that that's what I can do also in furtherance of educating other people about the faith, educating people about crochet, and educating designers on how to best write their patterns so that they can spread that beauty throughout the world. Because the more beauty there is, all beauty eventually turns us towards God as the source of all beauty in this world. So it all gets to come together back to my faith that I can say, hey, I'm working on these patterns. I'm a technical editor, and I chose to do that for a variety of reasons, but a big one that pulls it together with the God's will in my life aspect is that I do have a very math and science educational background, but I also have this love for fiber and fiber arts. And when I learned about tech editing, it just seemed like the magical put together of all my superpowers. And it was like, this was a dream come true. So that's where it's like, every now and then you really do see the Holy Spirit saying like, hello, like big beacon of light, like this is what you're supposed to do. And so that's what I do. So I help crochet designers primarily. I do help knit designers as well. I'm not like exclusively crochet, but I do specialized crochet designs, and I tech edit them for all kinds of designers all over the place, all over the world, really is what's really cool. So that's what I do.
Really
and
awesome.
the mom part about it is that I also have 5 kids. So the youngest was like 2, I think, when I decided to, start my own business and stuff.
Yeah. that's always the best time to start it, when you're in the weeds of it. Although, they say give a job to a busy person because they're more likely to get it done. And so I guess that, that's kind of the same idea. Busy mom, get her working. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's been fun. I mean, my kids like it because they get to see stuff and see me do things. And, I don't, because I'm not a tester, I can make whatever I want still. So I don't have to make everything, but
Perfect.
every time I do, they still love it. They want to steal everything I make, just absolutely everything. So it's always good for an ego boost when someone really likes what you make.
yeah, for sure. But I love you talking about how you became a tech editor, because all those things that you just said about tech editing are all the reasons why I would never, ever, ever want to do that. And it's amazing how, we're all in the same community, we're all running the same circles, and yet we're all still kind of so different. And, the math and science part of it, that's why I don't write as many patterns as I could, because doing all of the math makes my head hurt and I don't want to. So.
Right. And that's what I've really discovered along the way, that it is a certain type of person that comes into these different arenas. I joined my local embroidery guild of America several years ago, and after going to a few meetings with those ladies there, and they were all like minimum 15 to 20 years older than me, but I started to really notice we are all the same. And why wouldn't we be if we're into something that's as meticulous as needle and thread on fabric and putting beads on things? I could see the similar personalities amongst all of us. And the same has been with tech editing, because I started a course also on like how to become a tech editor, like here are the things you might need to learn about and find out. And in doing that, whenever I have the coaching calls with my students, I get a whole lot of the same thing. I've got this educational background. I really like math. I love spreadsheets. I love algebra. I'm a good writer. People that are, anybody that's meticulous about these things, but doesn't want to be the one that generates the writing, so that's, that's the kind of person. And so we're like sometimes quiet natured, but definitely have this mix of like, we've got enough of the creative stuff that we want to be around these things and around this creative stuff that's happening, but we really like to make sure the numbers are right and the periods are in the right spot.
Yeah. You'll not be around the creatives, but you're going to make sure we're all in order while we're doing it.
Right. And it's great that I can share with people how you can follow universal rules when it comes to writing, knit, and crochet. But there are ways to follow those rules that don't make you, it's not going to make you regimented into like some cookie cutter kind of pattern. You can still express a lot of originality within that system. But when designers go off and they just start writing their own pattern in their own language using different terminology and almost no punctuation whatsoever, and someone comes from knowing how to read a pattern and sees one that clearly that designer did not know how to read or write patterns, it's a big turnoff. So I want those designers to be able to express themselves for everybody. And in doing that, I'm trying to teach them how to write crochet. So I have like several ebooks that are how to write crochet this style, like for color work or multiple sizes. Like, how do you put all the size numbers together and what are different ways that we can do that? How to write just the line of instruction. Okay. Like that's the biggest thing ever, because every single, like that was the reason why I wanted to put that one out there, because every how to write a pattern blog post from anybody is basically, here's your title, here's your materials, here's your other thing. Don't forget a gauge, maybe, you really need to have a gauge, by the way, but like some blog posts will be like, and then it'll have, then it'll have this big section that just says, and here's where you'll write your pattern. And then go on to the assembly and then the end. And it's like, you skipped over the really important part here in the middle. So I have a whole ebook on just how to write that line of instruction, row or round, and a number. And what do I do after that? And how, what am I going to capitalize or not capitalize, and blah, 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 blah. And so I can help people to set up how they want to write that line so that they're consistent across all their patterns.
Right. I think sometimes people forget, like, the point of communication is to be understood. And, in normal writing, you have the Chicago Institute of Style for a reason. So you can get exactly what you mean across. It's like, okay, what you're making may be new and unique, but how to describe it in a straightforward way is difficult. And I think it's something that people, struggle with sometimes. So it's excellent to have tech editing for that.
Yeah, and crochet, crochet is really unique also compared to knitting, because you can create a lot of really funky stitches by going into things like several rows below where you're currently working, or twist your piece this way or that way, or that's different from knitting your set with like the stitches on the needle. So a lot of times designers, I've had several times where designers think that they're creating a new stitch and they'll describe it to me and I'm like, oh, that's blah, blah, blah. That's an extended double crochet or something like that. And they're like, oh, I didn't think it was something. I thought I was doing something new and exciting. I'm like, no problem. This is what it is. Let me help you describe it. Here you go. They're like, oh my gosh, that's so fabulous. Because usually it's like, I don't know how to describe what I'm doing, but this is what I'm doing. I'm like, just describe it. Just tell me, like, tell the person in conversational words, you can do that. So,
yeah. I mean, like, those extended stitches are difficult, but really it is, count down 2 rows, put your hook in, grab your yarn. Like, it might not be the most polished way to say it, but really, if you explain it like that, people will be able to follow your instructions. And then if you have a tech editor like you to come in behind and kind of clean it up, put it in a nice little package and make sure it's all good, then yeah.
Right. You'd be amazed how many times that like it seems straightforward, but they'll leave out something crucial and you're like, now I have too many loops on my hook, or not enough,
Yeah. So you say you don't make the patterns, but like if they're describing a stitch, do you do that stitch to make sure that what they're saying is what they're doing?
Yeah, I do. That's when I pull out my hook. When they're defining a stitch and they've described it and written it out a certain way, sometimes I can read it and I'm like, okay, that's accurate. And sometimes they describe something, I'm like, let me check that out, and I'll do every step and then I'm like, I don't think so. So I do. I'll pull out my yarn to stitch up certain things. If there's a stitch pattern that's questionable, I'll work it out. I'll either work it or I'll draw it in diagrams on like graph paper to make sure that everything's lining up the way that they said. If I can't do the mental math, or I can't create an algebraic equation in my spreadsheet that figures it out, then I'm like, I gotta draw it or stitch it, because I'm like, and if I get down to that point, it's probably not a good not go in a fantastic way. I can't say that nice. It's like, if I have to stitch it out because I can't work out the math some other way, something's off, and it could just be that a few words are off and that's why I'm not understanding it. But like, if I can't understand it, I don't think somebody doing this for the first time is going to be able to understand it. And that's my baseline is, could someone who knows how to do the stitches work this kind of pattern the first time? If this is like their first double crochet hat ever, can they work this pattern? If this is their first garment, can they work this pattern? That's my go-to. And if they couldn't figure that out, then we need to fix something.
That's interesting. So you decided to become a tech editor because you're like, science, math, all of this stuff makes my brain happy. How long does it take you to actually become one? How long did it take you to go from like, this is cool, to, hey, now I am one?
Right. That's just your own mental decision, because there is no qualification for a tech editor other than reputation, that's it. And so I was a tester for Lorene Eppolite, and she used to own Creation Crochet that has an 8 in creation, the number 8. And so I was one of her testers, and I was running through things, and I would send back edits to her. And it was in that like in the precision of my edits and sending her things that she was like, you're really good at this. You need to be a tech editor. And it was just thinking about it. I was thinking about it for a long time. I was dragging my feet on really trying to go in on that. And then she finally she sent me a pattern that was hers. I think she sent me one that was hers. And she said, hey, you don't have to make this one. Just look at it, please. Read it over for me. And then she sent me another one for another outfit that was somebody else's pattern. And it was a different designer's pattern that she said, I think there's some issues with this one. Will you edit it for me? I'll pay you. And then I was like, I guess I'm a tech editor,
That's
and
pretty
so,
cool.
So that was it. And then it was just moving forward. If I wanted to declare myself as a tech editor, I could, and so I decided to get a website going and put myself out there, and then offered tech editing to other designers that I knew, and just gradually started to grow my business from there. The good thing is that the designer that Lorene asked me to do the other pattern, she was so happy about what I had done for her. She started sending me more of her patterns. So, you may like if I was her in that situation, at first I would have thought, oh my gosh, my pattern wasn't good enough. She had to send it to an editor, but she didn't, and then I would be like, oh my gosh, maybe my patterns aren't good. But to her, she was like, oh my gosh, this person could understand my patterns, and she made it better. Here's all my other patterns. And so she gave me a whole bunch of patterns. She shared my name with other designer friends that she knew. In the first year that I was doing it, somebody asked me to help them with their book. And so I helped tech edit a book early on. And I mean, it's just really taken off from there. And it's really been an amazing blessing, especially for our 5-kid family.
Yeah, for sure. No, so I know some people do take like classes and things to learn how to do it, but for you, it was just so natural that you just kind of fell into it.
Right. And I did look into a whole lot of things. At the time that I was starting, there really wasn't anything that was crochet specific. There was a whole lot of knit specific. And I ventured into other tech editor communities, and they're very friendly. And a lot of them were like, just take the knit class because it's basically the same. And I kept thinking, but crochet is kind of different. Like, is it really? But they would suggest books, and a lot of the books were how to design a sweater that fits yourself kind of thing. And so it wasn't teaching someone how to evaluate a pattern for 9 sizes. That's something different. So I didn't take a specific course about tech editing. What I did once, after I'd already been editing for some people for a while, I went to the Crochet Guild of America meeting that year, and I did have a class with Edie Ekman that was really fantastic. It was one of her classes just about it was kind of like precision in writing patterns kind of thing. And basically I took it to really make sure that I was paying attention to the right things when I was looking at patterns. And it just verified everything that I was doing, pretty much, that I was on the right track with that. So I didn't take any courses in order to do mine. I love reading patterns, and I love reading books. And I think if someone reads enough patterns that you start to find errors in them, you're probably on your way to being a tech editor already. And that's the key thing, is like, if you enjoy reading patterns, like on Ravelry, I was a massive pattern collector. I was like, how did someone like create the most glorious thing in the world, that it's this massive database of patterns and I can search for anything I want and then look at all these patterns and compare them. I mean, it was amazing. So I was a big pattern hoarder to begin with. And when you read through all those patterns, I mean, then
that like cracks me up. with,
yeah, and then to have books.
sorry, that most people are like, oh, the pictures are pretty, I'm gonna make this, this, and this, and then they download it, and then they're like, okay, and then I don't look at it for years. And you're like, no, I like all the little boxes, I like the squares, I like the building blocks of all these. Rest of us are like, oh, I didn't know it had that kind of an increase when they get halfway through their pattern. Oh, wait, hang on.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I mean, I found errors in books that I've gotten from the store, you know, and it's like, I wish they didn't do that. Like, come on, it's a book. You really had an error in your book, you know. And I'll really second guess myself a lot too. I'll look at some things and be like, that's not really what the diagram says. Is this really what she means, or am I the one not getting it? But no, I found errors in books. I also have books that I totally recommend to other potential tech editors that I say, these are the authors that I never find mistakes in their books. And these are the people you need to study like a class, study the way they write patterns, because this is the way it should be done. So that's kind of where it was. And there have been times when I've had issues, but or questions about something, but a lot of times it's just kind of like just a customer relations kind of thing. And I'll ask some of the other tech editors early on. I would ask the other tech editors, like, how would you deal with this situation? And we have a very private tech editor group that, like, we don't release information from that. So you can share those kind of questions there. As far as the math goes, you know, it's almost never really been that much of a problem, unless something's really wrong with the pattern. And then I'm like, I'm simply not getting these numbers. There's only been a handful of patterns that I had to say, look, I can't keep going on this one. I'm going to have to send you to another tech editor. Again, a lot of times that's been because of language issues, like a language barrier. You know, it could be a translation issue with somebody that English wasn't their first language. There are things like that, but it's been really fun and really, really amazing. And I've had a lot of really long-term clients, and that's really rewarding.
That's really cool. You just amaze me, because I think the worst part of being a designer is I can make stuff up out of my brain all day long. The minute I'm like, okay, now I need to sit down and write that, I will find like 18 other things I need to do first, because I'm like, I don't want to write that pattern. So, and I know Anne's like that too. She'll have a pattern. I'm going to write this pattern, and 6 months later, I'm going to write this pattern.
I know. Well, one of the really great things I appreciate about, you know, tech editing in general, but you specifically being that detail oriented, it's the kind of play back and forth between art and craft, that it's like, you know, a craft that you think of art like, oh, it's creative, you know, you're doing this, but the sort of like hard kind of muscle memory skills that you learn after a while, kind of the aerobic muscle skills versus the, you know, moving fast muscle skills when it comes to artistry, where you know, it's like, yes, you can paint a picture, but can you paint a picture the same way that you want it to be? You know, that sort of can you make the commission on time? Can you make that all work out? It's a very important set of skills to not just be creative, but to be reliable. It's important. And especially if you're, you know, like I said, working on commission, working on a time schedule, that having to sort of, in a way, it confines you to a certain line, but also it like frees you up in order to communicate to others and to work in that way. I don't know if that made any sense. Sorry.
Yeah. And with tech editing, what's great, like when it comes to the math, I also have an ebook. I'm like just promoting everything I have. I also have an ebook that's how to grade crochet. It's a simple guide to grading crochet. And it was meant for designers that are afraid of math, the people that are very artsy, that just don't want to have to deal with doing the calculations with the math. So it's a very, very basic way of teaching them how to do grading. And I had some designers that took that and really branched out and started doing, they went from doing like only bags to doing garments, and because of that book, because it showed them how to do it. And so that's what's great. I mean, the coming up with those numbers and doing the original writing is what the designers do. You know, I love getting the product already done, like the pattern is already written, the numbers are all in there. Like, I don't like doing the grading for a designer. I really will like bulk at doing that, at coming up with the numbers myself, unless it was like a perfect rectangular kind of panel, because there's so many nuances to fitting that come into play that I really feel like that's the designer's responsibility when they're going to grade a piece. So I don't like coming up with the numbers, but I will sure check your numbers compared to your gauge and find out if it's going to reach the finished size. You know, and that's what my spreadsheets are all about. So my setup is like 2 monitors. I have one here and one here, and I can have the pattern on one and my spreadsheet on the other, and just look at one and put it in over there and go back and forth and, you know, run some calculations, because line by line, the stitch count could change. You may set up a stitch pattern and put like the asterisk repeat in there, and it doesn't reach the end of the line, you know, and I'm like, you have a few stitches you need to address, you know, or it just doesn't fit at all, you know, or they created too many stitches, or they didn't create enough stitches, or whatever, you know. So that's what I really like doing. And I'll be able to work through that, and just figure out the math. You know, it's really great to be able to look at it and say, you told them that the gauge was here, and then you told them to make this many rows. But, you know, it's like, if they do that, their piece is 10 inches long, and you said it was going to be 8. Is that enough of a difference that you're okay with, or do we need to change something? You know, and so, I mean, and that can come with anything. I mean, people grade blankets, you know, it's like hats, socks, blankets, garments. I mean, it's all kinds of things. So it's like, do you want it to be this size, or do you know, are you plus or minus an inch? Are we plus or minus 5 inches? Really? Like, I think you either need to rethink your gauge, or rethink the stitches on this one, or rethink whatever you told them this was going to be. You know, like, if you want to say it's going to be 10 inches because that's what it's looking like, then why don't we just change that number? And that's the other aspect of tech editing that's not necessarily frustrating, but you're not the decision maker in a lot of these things. If you find a mistake in a pattern, there's up to 3 different ways that it could be wrong. It could have been it was set up wrong somewhere up like at the gauge level. It could be that the previous line didn't tell you to do the right thing, or it could be something was wrong in the current line, or it could just be that like when they added it up to the stitch value at the end, that addition was wrong. You know, there's so many different ways that it could be wrong. All I can do is highlight something and say, I'm not getting these numbers. Send it back. You know, because I can't then correct this line and say, here's what you have to do in order to get that number, because that number could have been the wrong one. It could be everything in between that's wrong. I mean, it could be so many different ways. All I do is say, I'm not getting the same as you, and I send it back.
That's interesting. It makes sense though that would be frustrating, because like when I always have my mom testing at my stuff, and so like I'll write something down and she'll call me and she'll be like, I don't even know what this means, because you're not in that person's head. And so like you're trying to read it, you're trying to figure it out, but because you're not in the same, you're not that person, you don't know where their brain was thinking this was going to go. And so it's like, yeah, I've got nothing. Like sometimes she'll just be like, I don't know what this is, and she'll just like tell me to fix it. Like, I don't know what's happening. It's the same kind of, it's just funny to me.
And I tell designers also, the great thing about the difference between tech editors and testers is that a lot of times testers might assume what you meant, and then they'll fudge in the rest of it. But a tech editor is going to tell you straight up, you're missing a spot here. you're
Yeah.
missing a period, this comma's in the wrong spot, you misspelled this other thing. Even English grammar, in the notes section or stitch descriptions or whatever, I'm like, let's get our grammar accurate. But at least I'm not going to make an assumption about what you're doing as you write it. I want it right for you. And that's why we're all perfectionists. That's the other thing. Tech editors are like massive perfectionists.
Yeah. Like I said, thank God that we're all different, because I'm so glad that you are good at this.
Yeah. Yeah, we're here for you. Bring it to our anxiety. That's okay.
Yeah, that's just, man. But I love how passionate you are too. I can tell that you absolutely adore doing it, which is awesome, because you talk to a lot of people about what they do for a living and they're like, oh, well, I do this. And you are so not like that. That's awesome.
No, I have to hold back. I have to try to be reserved. Can you tell?
You geek out too much over patterns and people are like, all right, I'm just going to go over here.
Right. That's enough, Emily. Don't talk about caps or no caps, honestly.
No, that's cool. So you've been doing it for, what'd you say, around 6 years now?
Yeah,
Pretty.
2018 was the big first year that I branched out and said, hey, I'm going to be a tech editor. And I was just running some numbers today to update my website, which I'm really bad about. But I've edited almost 3,000 patterns since then.
Wow.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it that you love it so much. That's awesome. So we started talking again this month because some stuff went down. Do you want to talk about it a little bit, or do you want to?
Yeah. And cut me off wherever you want to, so I'm not monologuing the whole thing. But along the way, like, I really thought early on, one of my goals was to work for publications. I've edited books for a handful of designers by now, which has been phenomenal. I've been contacted by publishing companies to help with books, and that's been really exciting. And I kind of thought, like, I'll really make it when I work for like a magazine. And then I am, and then some of them contacted me and asked me to work with them. So I've been working with a couple of publications for quite a while. And one of them recently changed ownership. And I was kind of like just brought along with the transition at first. And I edited some patterns with the first couple of issues after the switchover. And then I didn't hear anything from the owner for a while. And she had said, well, we're taking a little break for a while to help some things catch up from the transition. And then after that break time had passed, I said, hey, I'm ready when you are, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And she emailed me finally and just said, I've hired new tech editors, which would have been fine. Like, if she just ended it there and just said, hey, I've hired new tech editors, I'm like, fine.
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, you said that you were brought over from a sale, so it wouldn't be out of the question for them to say, I've got this person I would prefer to work with.
Totally.
That makes sense,
Yeah, totally. And it could have just ended there. It could have just said that. But she didn't end there. What she followed on with, I know. What she followed on with was, it's come to my attention that we do not agree on basic human rights. I will not employ someone who believes queer people should not be allowed to live and love as they do, or that they are less than others in any way.
That's bold.
Right. And I'm like,
so
Whoa.
I don't mean to laugh about it. It's just that some of these people, when they get these thoughts in their head, like they're just going to say them. And you're just going to be that horrible person because they've decided that you are. And that's what makes me laugh, because it's just ridiculous.
Right. I mean, and to me, I was like, I mean, I had this face. I was like, what? So everything starts racing through my head. I'm like, okay, what on earth? What did she see or hear, or what did we put out there that could have possibly ended up at this? And so all I can think is that, okay, it's got to be something about me being Catholic. It's got like that's all I can think, because I'm certainly not saying out loud anything that is said here. I certainly don't believe that. I believe every human has dignity. I believe everyone should be allowed to live and love as they do. What she says in her thing about my beliefs are absolutely wrong. And so I'm like, that doesn't make sense. She doesn't say exactly what I said that made her think this. She doesn't say exactly what human rights she's talking about. It's just this statement of,
I mean,
I will, huh?
Well, I was going to say, on your Instagram, I mean, you do have an Israeli flag crocheted thing. So I'm just trying to think. I mean, a lot of the crowd that feels that way are pro Hamas, so not Hamas, but
which again does not make sense, because Hamas will kill gay people.
Correct. I'm not asking them to be rational. I'm just saying that, know, from the things that you've put out, that's the most controversial thing I've seen that you have, is that you have an Israeli flag on your profile there.
Right. So. And when 2020 happened, and every business, from like your toothpaste provider to your pet walker, or who, everybody was sending out statements that are like, I believe in racial blah, 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 on and on and on. They felt obligated to put out this statement. And even yarn companies are putting out statements, and designers are putting out statements. And I'm like, honestly, I am not diving into this nonsense. I was just like, okay, yeah, treat everybody with dignity. The end.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's not rocket science.
I know. I'm like, treat everybody with dignity. Everybody has dignity. Treat everybody with dignity. Period. End of story. Not making any special favors for anyone. I'm not going to seek out certain people based on some arbitrary I can't change what color I am, and neither can you. So I'm not going to pick someone based on their color, because to pick them because they're one color is just as racist as picking them because they're not that color. And so I was just like, I ain't getting into this, you guys. I'm here to edit patterns. So even in 2020, I was like, everybody's putting out these statements, and people are like, if you don't, it's violence. If you do and you say the wrong thing, it's violence. And I was like, so what do you do? So I was just like, look, I'm not going to get into this stuff. I sent that out in a newsletter. I think I put it on my blog. I was just like, I'm not going to get into this stuff. I think everybody should be treated with dignity. You want to work with me? Fine. I'll treat you as a professional. You treat me as a professional. We have a professional relationship. I could give a rat's patootie what you look like. And for most of you, I couldn't pick you out of a lineup because I only deal with you on email. Okay.
That's one of my favorite things. There's so many people who are like, you're such a racist. I would not actually know you if I fell over you while I was walking along.
Someone saw me at the CGOA meeting last year, but she had a mask on, and she's like, hi, Emily. And I'm like, who are you? I don't know who you are. She said her name. Okay. I recognize the name. Hi, how are you? I wouldn't even recognize her even if she did have the mask off, but because I don't look at that. I'm looking at emails all day. I'm looking at emails and patterns and numbers and my kids.
Yeah.
So
those kids take up a lot of time. It's hard to like worry about some of the other stuff. And you've got more than I do, so
right.
I'm sure.
So I still get this email that's like, I won't employ someone who believes queer people shouldn't be allowed to live and love as they do. Clearly, she thinks I believe that. So I'm like, where could that have come from?
Mhm.
Because I certainly am not saying things online like that because I don't believe that,
Right.
but she's going to say that. Or that they are less than others in any way. Again, you really think I'm going to put a statement like that out there?
No. But sometimes when you choose not to make a stand, they take it as, well, obviously, since you didn't come out and say that I'm with BLM or whatever the cause of the moment is, then if you don't immediately jump up and get right on that bandwagon, then you must hate everybody. But there's also, and we spoke about this before, but there's a reason they use the word they do. And there's a reason they phrase things a certain way, because I've been called a racist. There's no way I can go and say I'm not a racist besides saying I'm not a racist. There's nothing I can do in my life that will disprove this idea that they have in their head. And that makes it, and that's why they come at you with certain, that's accusations.
It's qualifications. It's qualifications. It's like, because you haven't checked the right boxes, and I'm sorry, my omission does not mean I hate you. Omission is just omission. You don't know what it is. So I had replied to her and was just like, hey, I'm sorry to hear that, and find it interesting that you'd come to this conclusion without actually discussing anything with me or asking me any questions regarding my beliefs. She's made a statement about my beliefs, but didn't ask me about that in any way. And so I was like, can you tell me where I've ever made any statement to this fact? Show me what that is. I was like, I've worked with a lot of designers, and I know for a fact I have worked with a lot of designers who believe a lot of things very different from me. And they probably know that I believe very differently from them. And it has never gotten in the way of the professional working relationship that we've had. So I kindly told her, I was like, I've never had any, I've worked for a lot of people that believe other things, and that's never gotten in the way of the relationship. I said I'd be glad to discuss any topic with you, and that I've always been open and honest about my Catholic faith. I've never asked anybody for anything. I've never required anything of anybody in order to be one of my clients, and I kind of just maintained a cordial, respectable relationship with everybody. I don't have a litmus test for you sending me your pattern other than don't be a jerk,
Right. And it's funny because nowadays people, they feel like we have to like be friends, or we have to all agree on things to like work together. Really, I mean, I don't have to do, I can work with many people, and I could think that almost everything they say is wrong, except that, hey, I like their yarn, or and if you are a good tech editor and you're doing what a tech editor does, which is, editing patterns, I would assume that would be the thing. And it's so funny because it could have been so easy. It didn't have to be this thing where it's
by the way, you're a bigot. I've hired new tech editors, and that's because you're a bigot. And it's like, it could have been, I hired new tech editors. Adios.
Yeah,
okay,
we're taking the publication in a different direction. We chose different tech editors. Thanks for your, like, seriously, that's the difference. It could have been so easy, but she made it such a stupid thing because that crowd has to have the last word. They have to like, it's not just because I hired someone else, it's because you are horrible. Like, it's just the most bizarre thing.
Right. And that was it. That I was just like, and when I contacted you, I was very much in the flutter of, I can't have someone out there making claims about my beliefs when they're so wrong. Like, how can I live with someone else claiming that about me? Because I didn't want her to be out there like speaking not necessarily for me, but kind of trying to. If she said the same thing to somebody else, if she went to somebody else and she said, well, Emily believes X, Y, and Z, which is totally wrong, I don't want her doing that. Well, again, I can't control what other people say, but it was good talking to you, that you could at least like laugh, and you're like, oh, you're in the beginning of this. It's not so big a deal. And I've been called everything. I just,
you sweet summer child.
Right. I was like, you're so innocent in this whole you're a bigot crowd. Just wait, honey,
Well, I don't mean to like laugh, because when you're in it, I remember being in it, and it feels terrible. You feel horrible because you know who you are, and to have somebody say that you're not who you are, it feels awful. But also, I didn't want you to fall into the cancel culture thing where you're like apologizing for things that aren't real, because that's how they get you. You apologize for something that's not actually true, and then your apology is not good enough, and then they come after you and they want more. I didn't want you going there. That was the big part of it.
I mean, I'm not going to apologize for my faith. That's actually not what apologetics means, So I was like, I'm not going to apologize, but I'm also not going to go into like, I can't teach her the catechism of the Catholic Church.
Right.
I can't teach her theology of the body from John Paul II. I can't get into this level of detail of human dignity and human worth and what our bodies were meant for. I can't get through that in an email, and she isn't going to want to hear it anyway. So it was still good to talk to you, because the series of emails that followed really never answered my question.
Because there isn't an answer. Generally,
right.
Like Anne and I discussed this on last week's show. If I called Anne a name and Anne said to me, that hurt my feelings, then of course, obviously, I should go apologize to Anne, because that's what people do. But if my living here has offended Anne in some way, what am I going to apologize for? I mean, my living my life over here. Sorry you don't like it. I don't know. Like,
right.
There's a difference between
like you and your face and
right.
the way you are.
Because I was like, first of all, show me where I've said anything like what you just told me.
They never can.
Show
That's
me.
The thing.
Right. Yeah. She can't. She wouldn't show me anything. She wouldn't prove anything. And then when I say, like, all I can assume is this is something to do with my faith, like, she comes back with, I didn't say anything about your faith. And I'm like, well, okay, then where did it come from? Because you're not telling me that either, and she came back with something that was just like, I've seen and heard enough of what you say to people who you think are your circle. And I don't mean to like give her a voice or anything, but and it was like, I've seen and heard enough of what you tell people you think are your circle. And I'm like, what? So what could like
are you talking?
I don't know, but like secretly behind the scenes, do I really shout these horrible things? No, because again, I don't believe it, but she, she threw out a bunch more of like, June is going to be our big pride issue. And are you going to be proud of that? Are you going to share that with people? And I'm like, they're patterns that anyone can put in any color they want.
Right. And that's, I'm sure that every pattern that you've tech edited is lovely and wonderful, but I am sure that there are some that for you and your aesthetic, you aren't like, oh my God, I need to share this with everybody I've ever met, because it's just not your thing. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to do a good job or you're not going to edit it properly. Like it goes back to you don't have to agree with everything. You don't have to love everything. You're doing a job, do your job. Move on.
Right. Right. And it was like, what have you done in past Pride months? And it's like, I went to the beach.
I just keep laughing.
I went to the beach with my family. I'm sorry that I'm not celebrating your choice. Right.
I'm sorry I'm not a part of your liturgical calendar. I kind of have my own, thanks.
Right, because and for her to be like, I didn't say anything about your religion. I'm like, in what way is this not your religion?
Right.
I mean, honestly, but
dude, where's our flag for being straight married couples with kids? Let's get flags for that. Like if we're gonna have why are we celebrating who somebody chooses to do the nasty with?
I know.
It's not a conversation.
Right. And so,
I don't get it.
I replied that also like in a very, I thought, diplomatic way. I just said, and I really told her, I was like, again, I'm asking you to give me the statements where I said what you said in the very first email. That's what I'm asking. Because I believe everybody has dignity and respect as human beings. Somewhere we have a miscommunication about what each of us thinks human rights are. If you think that I think certain people don't get them, and then I was like, I don't agree with all the choices that every other person makes in this whole world. And I'm sure you don't agree with other choices that people make. When I tried to say, I just don't agree with the choices that people make, her response was, queerness is not a choice. And I'm like, this is where I'm like, and my husband after like 2 emails would have been like, just stop right now. Like you're not gonna be able to see it. So when she comes back with like, queerness is not a choice, I'm like, wow, this is where like she needs theology of the body. And I can't explain it in an email.
And especially since a statement like queerness is not a choice, that's a dogma. That's a ending, conversation statement again of belief.
Yeah. Like what is a dogma? It's your foundational belief. But it's like also that they believe saying that. Mm-hmm. She's taking it as a great offense that I would imply that queerness is a choice and that some people should just choose to not be queer. And I'm like, I didn't want to get into, that's not the choice that people are making. Like, I don't have a choice that I have brown hair. I don't have a choice that I have brown eyes. I don't have a choice that, that I'm a woman, but I am. But I do have a choice about how I style my hair. I do have a choice about where I put my eyeballs. I do have a choice about what I do with my body. And that's the choice that I either agree or disagree with that other people choose to make. You can be whomever you are, whatever color, whatever sexuality, whatever you can. But there's a difference between a desire and acting out that desire. And it doesn't mean you're less human if you make the choice to not act out every desire that you have. I want to go eat chocolate cake for the rest of my life, but I'd rather not be 500 pounds.
And have diabetes.
I have a choice to make.
I'd rather be able to feel my toes, so we're good. You know?
Yeah. It's like we do have choices, even when it comes to how we act out our sexuality. I'm a heterosexual white female. I could have been sleeping around with as many guys as I wanted to. I could have put myself out there for anybody that would have taken me, but I chose to not. I chose to wait until I was married, and I chose the right person in a very picky kind of way, because I'm still a perfectionist. So those are the choices that people can make. And it's whatever is their foundation below that that's going to be driving it. So it's like, what is your foundation below that? What is the greatest thing that you're reaching for? Are you doing these things to glorify God, or are you doing it just to make yourself happy?
Well,
and that's where the theology of the body comes into it. And I'm not going to be able to explain that on email, and she's not going to hear it. So
right.
I'm just like, okay, she may be out there telling everybody that I'm a horrible bigot and I hate Pride Month. Well, you know what? I kind of do hate Pride Month. Am I free to say that? I also hate blue cheese. I mean, there's a lot of things I don't like in this world, and I really don't like the celebration of something that I think is fundamentally morally wrong. But
I
it's in
mean,
how
even
those choices are acted out. It doesn't mean I think that everyone who's gay is morally wrong. And I know that putting this out there could really be a problem. I don't think it's how you live your life, and
yeah,
it's
it's
become something that is very destructive to children and to families. And when families are destroyed, society is destroyed.
well, but they're doing it on purpose. The whole any desire that you have is okay, and it should be out on display. And you know what? People are free to do in the privacy of their home whatever they choose to do. That's not my business. But when they bring it out in the street where my kids can see it and where I have to see it and become a part of it, that's where I have the issue. People can do anything they choose. But like all of this Pride stuff, Pride Month used to be about like equal rights for people and getting health care for their partners, and like it was a lot different than it is now. And now it is any weird sexuality or
any deviance is okay.
And that's where the problem comes in. That's where I have the problem with it. It's not that the people are gay. It's that they are taking something that should be done in the privacy with the people that are consenting to do it with them. When they bring it out into the street, I am not consenting to these actions, and I don't want to be involved in them. And my kids are not consenting, and that's part of the problem. But
and I'll have to tell you, like, as a tech editor, we get into language issues sometimes. I've had one designer that for a publication had pronouns that were she, her, they. I'm like, words have meaning, and I have to have the right verb associated with the subject, and I can't say they is. I can't write that. I can't allow that to go through because it is grammatically wrong. So I'm not going to like change your bio description to be she, her everywhere because you have it. You want to have they is somewhere. Like that's the one part where for me as a tech editor, like that's the line I don't like crossing, is the language aspect. I don't care what you call yourself, but can we write English in the correct way? Like that's
that
the
you
line
have to
I'm gonna draw.
break even the rules of grammar for your own
Right.
whatever's going on.
I mean, I don't care. Like I said, I've edited Pride patterns in the past, and my thought process was, you know what? This is a color thing. They can put whatever colors they want. They can put whatever title they want on it. This is like rainbow stripes, whatever. This is what it, people are going to make this. They can make whatever they want into it. But, so at that point, I'm like, I'm editing a pattern. It's a pattern. I'm not endorsing anything along the way. But yeah, if it came down to a Pride thing, if I knew that June was going to be Pride Month ahead of time, you know what? I might just say, hey, you know what? I'm kind of busy this month. Here's another name of another tech editor that can help you. And I'll just opt out. I'm not going to say anything one way or another about it. I would rather opt out. But
opting out is still not acceptable because they want you to embrace them. And that's where the problem comes in. If you're not 150% gung-ho about every choice that everybody's making, then they think that you're a
Right.
bigot.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
But
it's like what you said before with the, silence is violence and saying the wrong thing is violence. It's like you have to jump exactly when they say when. And not before, not after, just then. Jump and fast before someone sees you not doing it fast enough.
right, right. So, I mean, yeah, and I mean, I have clients that are in this group. I mean, I know I have gay clients, and I don't care. They're great people and they make amazing patterns, just like everybody else that's a client of mine. And I try to have that professional relationship with all of them, and it's because it's about the pattern. And, when we've come to this point in our field, for crying out loud, crochet and knit industry, that we're having these conversations that can't just be about yarn, you know, something's
Well,
off
that's
the
our
rails.
privilege.
Oh,
That would
it's
be
just,
our white privilege, that we feel like we should just stick to our knitting
well,
and our
it goes,
crocheting.
I mean, it's like, I'm like, okay, what could I have possibly said that's possibly controversial? Well, when Roe v. Wade got overturned and all these businesses were putting out statements that were like, we'll pay for our employees to go somewhere else to have an abortion. And I'm like, do you really want to put this out like to everybody? Because there may be some people amongst your customer base that don't think the same way as you, and so I posted something that was kind of along the line. I was like, look, not everybody in your customer base thinks the same way as you. They are here because they like seeing pretty things made of yarn. Can we just stick to that? And I got feedback that was like, this is like a shut up and knit kind of statement. That means you hate everybody. And I'm like, wow, like I would totally miss something if all of a sudden, can we talk about yarn is the mean thing to say?
Right. And it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know, man. I think a business that practices, hey, would you like to kill your kids so it's easier to keep working for us? I- That. Maybe you shouldn't have said that out loud.
Right. Right. It's like, if you want to have this policy amongst your employees, then discuss it with your employees. Don't put it out for everybody else to know that when I send you money for the yarn, it might also go to that.
Right.
Sorry, but maybe I don't want to help you out with that. And again, I'll get feedback that's like, well, that's just fine because I don't want customers that don't think the same way that I think. I'm like, wow.
You know what I
Good
think about
business
all of this
motive.
stuff?
Hmm?
I just don't understand why people want everybody to be the same as them. Isn't part of what makes things interesting the fact that we're all different? Like, I talked to Anne, and Anne has a passion for Japanese stuff and comic books, and I don't know anything about any of it because I said Japanese stuff and she started laughing because it's a specific thing that I can't even remember what it is.
Is it manga?
No,
Are you
I
into
do
the
Manga, but
I only
I
know
don't
that
get
because
into
the
it,
kid
but
across the street's into it. I don't know anything about it.
one of the funniest things, sorry to digress, but I went into a bookstore and I bought, not super into manga, but I bought a couple of them. And the woman looked at me and she's like, so do you like those sort of books? And I'm like, I feel so judged right now. And she's like, oh, because there's a special discount code. I'm like, oh, she couldn't remember the word for manga. Okay. She was just looking at me like, what's your deal?
Yeah.
Wow.
But my point about that though is that Anne and I are super great friends, and she has interests that honestly I could care less about. But when she talks about them, I'm excited to hear about it because she's excited to talk about it. And that doesn't mean that I have to automatically love everything that she loves.
Mm-hmm.
I can just be happy that it makes her happy. Like, that's the thing that people have forgotten, is that we don't all have to be the same. We can, I can enjoy what I can enjoy, and you can enjoy what you enjoy, and we can come together on certain things, and that's okay. It doesn't all have to be exactly the same.
Right. And also, me saying that I think a certain way of life may be morally wrong, people are going to take offense at that. I get it. But, there are aspects of my life that someone else may think is also morally wrong. I take my kids to church every week, Some people may say kids get to think of what they need to figure it out on their own, and me forcing my religion on them may be the wrong thing to do. Okay. The thing is, Lorene Eppolite, who got me into tech editing, she and I disagree on almost every single political issue ever. Almost every single social justice issue, almost every political thing. Like, there are some things that we agree about, but pretty much everything else we completely disagree about. And we have had vehement conversations about it, and we are still friends.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, you can be friends with someone that disagrees with you. You can still be nice to that person, and that's the great thing, because that person still has dignity. So even if I think that you're doing something that really deep down I wish you didn't, like, I'm not gonna berate you for it to your face, and that doesn't mean I'm lying either. I would rather we come together on things that we agree with. And you know what? If we get to know each other along the way, and you share with me aspects of your life, and I share with you aspects of my life, and we can easily ask each other questions about it and discover things about the other person and why they believe the different things they do, we're going to learn more about the other person, and maybe we'll learn something about the other person's decisions and why they made them. There could be some deep reasons why someone has gone in one direction versus the other, and I mean, everything about us is deep, but just to say flat out that if you don't celebrate my choices and shout it from the rafters, that means you're an awful person and you must hate everybody in my camp, it's just ridiculous.
It's just bull. I love to use the example of, I don't go around proclaiming what I choose to do in my own bedroom, in my own privacy. So why do I have to care about what other people are doing? It's private for a reason,
Right.
And they're all big on consent, but if it's a pride parade, nobody has to consent because we should just all accept it. Just the most bizarre thing. Anyway.
Yeah. And I mean, there are a lot of philosophical issues that you could get into with it, and you could get into, like, the fact that it's supposed to be a alternative to the norm, but, like, there has to be a norm for you to be the alternative, and if you're, like, pushing everybody to accept what you are, you're not alternative from anything anymore. You are the norm. Like, if you've become the norm, then someone's still going to become an alternative to the norm, and it just gets more and more and more deviant, really,
or the alternative could be us trad wives baking our bread and raising our kids and stuff. I mean, I'm just saying, we could push for that.
Right. I know. I mean, and I live in a great place. I have a great community. I live somewhere where, like, 4 kids is the low average number of kids in a family, so me at 5, I'm normal at 5,
That's cool.
So, I mean, and even with that, you have people questioning you, how many kids you have, like that, like, oh, so many things. I don't know, but with this particular issue, I simply couldn't get anywhere. with her. She couldn't ever tell me what I said that was so offensive to her.
Even if she heard it from a friend's private chat,
Right.
sister's cousin,
Right. Which is all I can imagine, is that it was from something else that it so she can't tell me what I said. And before she tried to do anything else, I was like, I want to send something out to my newsletter. So I just sent something out to my newsletter saying, I've been relieved from a job. And, I'm a freelance worker. So I can't, it's not like I got fired really, but kind of like whatever, again, like if she just said we hired other people, that would have been great. But still, that I got let go. And I did accidentally use the word fired. I was like, apparently I got fired for my beliefs. I don't know what it was. I wasn't told. And I basically just told my clientele or my newsletter followers, I was like, look, if you ever hear anything from me or about me that doesn't seem to fit, I'm here and you can ask me. I'm glad to talk to anybody about anything, but I'm here, and again, I said, like, I don't want to get into political stuff on my site, but you know who I am. I'm not gonna apologize for being Catholic. I'm Catholic and I'm a wife and I'm a mom, and basically I'm like, people can take that wherever they want. They can take that in direction of, thinking I'm a Latin mass veil wearing, praying 5 times a day kind of person, or they can take it in the direction of, I'm a Biden Catholic who thinks abortion is swell, but I'm not, but, because it's like you can say you're Catholic and then follow that up with some things that really are not very Catholic. So I just say that, this is who I am. I'm not going to ask anything from you other than being professional. That's all I ask. Be professional and we'll have a relationship, so I sent that, and the funny thing is, in my newsletter I also said, I was, claims were made about my beliefs that are not right and couldn't be verified in any way. Nothing was said about my tech editing abilities, But after I sent that email or that newsletter that only goes to my email subscribers, she sends me another one and tries to tell me what a horrible tech editor I am.
Oh,
yeah. I think like, if that was the issue, she should have led with that.
I know. It was
hey, you're a terrible tech editor and you're a bigot. Like, at least like put the tech editor thing in there too. I mean,
right. I'll cry more about the like being a bad tech editor than I will about the bigot part. But but it was
kind of like the compliment sandwich, but with insults. It's like, and you're a bad tech editor and you're a bigot, and I don't like how you do your sentences.
Right. Yeah. No, it was like, by the way, you're well known for putting errors in patterns, and you've done that to me. And I'm like, then where? And like, why didn't you tell me about it?
Once again, where are the examples? Excuse me, if this is true, I'm sure, dude, we live in the world of screenshots and internet and everything's online. I'm sure that you could have showed me. I'm sure you could have screenshotted it. I'm sure you could have.
And surely the customers have complained before this point and then emailed you, and then you could have emailed me. And then we could have had this conversation if there was a problem.
Right.
Which there wasn't.
And I've had people drop me after one pattern because maybe they don't like my style or something and how I deal with the patterns and whatnot. And I'm fine with that, and I've had only one designer actually say to me, I don't think you're catching all the errors in my patterns. And I was like, okay, like what? And then I went back and I looked at some of her patterns and I was like, well, you're kind of inconsistent about how you do X, Y, and Z. So it's hard to figure out what your style is, and then she like didn't want to work with me anymore. And I'm like, okay, fine. That's one person. that actually took the effort of telling me, I don't like the way you're doing things, you know?
Right.
And I'm like, okay, but she tries to tell me, I know a lot of people who say they will not work with you. And I'm like, okay, fine. I could probably tell you who they are. You know, it's like this list of people that only worked with me once or twice and then didn't. And I'm like, I don't care. You
Sorry,
know?
I
Right.
just love the, many people say, not me, but many people. Like, I've
Sources
heard,
say,
yeah.
sources say.
It's funny though, because it doesn't matter what job you do. I clean houses, and I've cleaned for a couple of people who I've cleaned for them a few times, and I've not gone back. And that may be because chose not to, or because they didn't like my rates or my, whatever.
Mhm.
That's fine. That's going to happen in any job that you have. Not everybody is going to love everything you do, and that's fine. But I love it that she saw your email, uh, then went back and was like, oh, hey, by the way, you also suck at your job. Like, that's not where this was going at all, but cool.
I'm so
Right.
glad that you could tech edit her own hate email towards you. And it's like, and by the way, you missed this.
Right. We've got, I'm not going to bring up the typos that are going on, but yeah, I mean, just she tried to say that like she doesn't understand how I can say I don't get into politics, but I'm also based on my religion. She's like, I can't follow how you do that. And I'm like, well, that's kind of because you've turned every political issue into your religion, you know?
Right.
But again, like still can't tell me what I said that was so offensive in the first place. But then, and like I said, I haven't named any names, didn't name any names in my newsletter, but she's like, you don't want to cross the line into libel. And I'm like, in what way? Like,
I
I'm
think
not a
you have all the
lawyer
emails
or
to back
anything.
this up, so I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that you're fine.
Right. I'm not a lawyer or anything, but somewhere along the line, we're going to have some actual facts that come out so that I can either like explain it or refute it or say, yeah, that's totally what I said, you know, but that hasn't happened.
I'm sorry, what a bizarro threat to do. It's like, and now I'm going to draw you into court if you even think about it. And I'm like, dude, no, you won't.
No, they
Why?
won't. Yeah.
So I I don't know. What's really great is that DK, totally forgot your real name.
That's
Jennifer,
okay. Nope, I don't use it
Mary.
online, so it's
You
fine.
don't?
Nope.
Okay, great.
Nope.
Cut that part out. DK just told me, hey, you know what? She's following you. Just pray for her. And I was like, that's it. And she was also like, you know, you said, this is where you ignore. This is where you just drop it and ignore her because it's just not going anywhere. So that's what I can do. I can just pray for her and just hope and pray
And
that the rest of my client base can still stick with me and, you know, keep going.
yeah, and it's a little bit ironic that, I asked you to come on and talk about all of this, but I part of the reason why Anna and I like to highlight people who have these things happen to them is so that other people, it's inevitable at some point. A lot of people who follow us are going to get some sort of pushback because of their beliefs, because of following us, because of whatever it may be. And so we'd like to take the stories that have happened and highlight them so that people can see, didn't ruin you, didn't ruin me or Anne. Like, everybody's still chugging along, everybody's fine. We can see that this is all nonsense. And so that's part of why we do talk about it, even though it's a little bit counter, like, against what I just told you, like, hey, leave her alone. But also, people should know that this is the tactic, because if you come up against it, like Emily came up against it and she sent me a message and she's like, hey, can we chat? And so, like, we talked because she was, it's upsetting and it's a struggle. And so, we do this so that everybody can
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
know what
and I
to
knew
do. Or,
I knew you'd been through it. You know, I saw the stuff early on when Ravelry, you know, basically called any conservative a white supremacist, and I was like, "Ooh, really? my dream site, my dream database is gonna tell me that, like, even if I'm pro-life, I'm a white supremacist? Really? Like, they cast a wide net on that one.
Yeah,
And
that's another one that's like, should maybe be not saying the whole, I'm anti-killing babies. It's just a white people thing. I kind of think it isn't.
right, right.
Yeah, not. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think that there have been several years where more Black babies were killed in New York than were born.
Yeah, that's
You know,
pretty bad.
That doesn't surprise me.
I don't think that's
Unfortunately.
not really a white issue, but I knew that y'all had been through it. And so that's why I messaged you. I was like, I'm not hyperventilate if I have to deal with this one more email with this woman that just twists everything I say in the wrong way. And you were like, just stop talking to her. Just stop.
Oh, good.
Well,
I'm fine. You're fine. We're fine. Okay.
But
sometimes it seems like we're
upsetting.
not fine, but we're fine.
Yeah. And I get it. When somebody calls you names or says something about like who you are, it's like awful. Nobody likes that, but it's okay. Like, it'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. Like I said, I'm still not going to put a litmus test on anybody. I'm not going to be the Catholic tech editor for Catholics only.
Well, we can't be friends anymore then, because I'm not Catholic. So, sorry. I guess we're done.
Bye.
Right. And it's like, oh man, just want people to be nice to each other and just be professional. That's all I want.
Good news is that you're training 5 people to be nice to each other and to be professional. So, and I'm working on 2, so that's something, right? It's got to count for something.
Yeah. I mean, my kids are really amazing. They're really amazing, and yeah, and when I, try to explain things in different ways of life, that some people choose, you can see how children are just like, what? Like, they get when something's not going the way that they're supposed to be made, they're just like, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, yeah, I know, mostly when it comes to like trans stuff, which I didn't even bring up, but then she brought up in an email, she's like, and when you say that trans could be a choice, and I'm like, wow, I didn't even bring up trans stuff, but you did.
In your head? No, because she knows the stuff. But
yeah.
Okay, so I hope this was cathartic for you, because now she is out of your life. Do a little meditation.
We're gonna take a deep breath in and just whoosh her out, right? Yes, if you can't tell, I'm quite emotional. I'm a very animated person, and I'm quite transparent. There's absolutely no fooling someone how I feel when you see my face. So yay that this is on video and everybody can see. She's all over the place. She's a basket case.
I'm gonna send you that shirt that says "I'm sorry for what my face said when you were talking," or whatever it is. That. Yeah, I sometimes need it too.
Yeah, resting bee face is really bad. Yeah, or just sighing sometimes.
How funny. No, but I'm glad. I'm really, really glad that you came and shared your story with us. It was ups and downs and so much passion, and I thank you for telling it to us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you. Thanks. What?
It was no, you're just so funny. Your face, like all of the. I have a kid that does that, where they talk and like everything they're thinking like plays across their face, and I find it
just
awesome.
good.
I sometimes joke, it's like, I have a superpower. You could read my mind, which doesn't seem like it really works out for me, but
that's
it's like,
it is.
It's just
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. But
yeah. I can
awesome.
actually shoot daggers out of my eyes. Watch. Oh yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So before we go, want to show us our yarn one more time, ma'am?
Yes. Yes. Our giveaway from Chicken Lady Fiber Art. This is tweet us on Facebook. It is the most lovely emerald green. Very excited about this. And yeah, to enter for the giveaway, go ahead and comment on this episode. And to get 20% off your order, use Chicken Lady's code BlueHen20PIK at chickenladyfiberarts.com and sign up for her newsletter.
Yeah. And sign up for Emily's newsletter because, you never know when you're going to decide you need a pattern tech edited. So,
Right.
yeah.
And my newsletter is not obnoxious. I rarely send anything. But if I'm gonna have a sale on my time or any of my publications, it'll be there. But my information's on the site. You can email me anytime. If you are interested in me tech editing a pattern or something, you can email me and ask me any questions before you even send me a pattern. I'm here. That's what I'm doing.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming today and talking to us. I thought it was a lot of fun, so I appreciate it. And guys, don't forget to join us next Tuesday for Live from the Knitting Wars. We will be on with our panel of whomever decides to join us. And yeah, we'll see you guys soon. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.